Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. There we go. Okay. Everybody in the back? Sounds like the microphone's on. Okay, great. Well, good evening, everybody. My name is Chuck Worcester. I'm your elected town and school district moderator. I was elected last year at town meeting to run this year's meeting, so I'm happy to be here. Tonight is the first of 3 meetings in this year's town meeting cycle. This is budget and candidates night. And we'll hear presentations from the select board, the school board, and candidates for office, and have a chance to ask questions. There is an agenda for this evening. You may have seen it on the way in. If you didn't, maybe your neighbor has one, or you can get one in the back. Our second meeting will be town meeting day itself, which will be this Saturday, starting at 10 a.m. We'll be here in the auditorium this year, not in the gym. So I think that's correct, right? Yes. So new this year, we'll be meeting here on Saturday. So mark your calendars for that. That'll be 10 a.m. We'll start right here. The warning for Saturday's meetings, town and school, are in this book, which is also available. Our town and school meeting committee had them in the lobby. They're also up in the back. And the pages at the front of each section have the warnings for town meeting for Saturday. So there's a lot of reading to do. I noticed this was particularly thick this year, so we're getting a good per pound value. And then our third and final meeting is voting day itself on town meeting, which is a week from tomorrow, and that's as usual in the auditorium, 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. Gymnasium, sorry. Thank you, everybody. Okay. So you're going to notice there's some overlap between these 3 meetings, and I want to clarify under state statute what's allowed to happen when. So tonight we're discussing the budgets and the candidates, but we're not voting on them. All the voting is a week from tomorrow. Rather, the purpose of tonight's meeting is to ask questions, clarify details, help you decide how you intend to vote next week, and or talk to others to encourage them to vote in a certain way. In other words, tonight we talk, next Tuesday we vote, but you can't vote tonight and you can't talk on Tuesday. Okay, and Saturday's meeting agenda, as you'll see in the book, the printed warnings themselves are pretty short. It's mainly concerned with housekeeping items like keeping the town running on schedule in accordance with statute. But the first item on both agendas is to receive the reports of our elected officials. Which is to say this book right here. And since that includes the budgets, if people have questions again on Saturday, we can discuss budget issues again. So this is not your last chance to do that. But the one thing we won't discuss on Saturday is the candidates. We're doing that tonight, and then we'll be voting on them on Tuesday, but we won't talk about that on Saturday according to state statute. So tonight's your chance to ask questions of the candidates. And then as we get started, a few words of thanks to the people who've been really instrumental in setting up town meeting cycle and tonight's meeting. And that's Lisa O'Neill, our town clerk, John. I know there she is, thanks Lisa. John Haverstock, our town manager, is here on stage. Paula Nolte, I saw you here, Paula. Yeah, helping out. We have a great crew here at Junction Arts and Media who's recording and broadcasting this, thanks to the folks at JAM. And this year we have a full town and school meeting committee, which is fantastic. You probably saw them as you came in through the lobby, but a special thanks to this year's committee, Ali Tuffengen, Kim Souza, Becky Cholet, and Jason Hill. Okay, then finally, thanks to each and every one of you here for showing up. Democracy is more than just voting. It's the process of self-government, of building and maintaining community, making informed decisions about what's best both now and into the future. And that's really what tonight's meeting is about. Okay, matters at hand. As I mentioned, tonight's meeting, we have 4 parts. We'll have the town budget, the school budget, chance for the candidates to present themselves, and then a Q&A with the candidates. And then our last item of housekeeping is you must be a registered voter of the town of Hartford to participate in tonight's meeting. There's a little bit of a misprint that we missed on the agenda. which says, I think it says residents or taxpayers or something. It's actually voters in state statute. So if you wish to speak tonight, you need to be a voter in the town of Hartford. And when you approach the microphone, just introduce yourself to us and tell us where you live. It's honor system, so we appreciate your consideration on that. And then there's one exception to that, which I would ask your permission to do, which is I would request that any employee of the town or the school district who wishes to speak tonight to matters germane to their budgets be allowed to do so. So if there's no objection to that, I will declare that adopted. Okay, great. All right, on to tonight's meeting. We'll be starting off with the town budget presentation. I hope that we'll have a chance for a little bit of a Q&A towards the end of it, but if not, we can include that in the fourth part of the meeting. But I'll introduce John and Mary. Take it away.
Thanks very much. First question is, okay, there we go. Thank you very much. Speak into the microphone, Haverstock. That's it. I would like to start with one housekeeping matter. We wanted to bring to your attention that we strive every year to put together a town report that's accurate and complete. We did identify an error on one page that I'd like to bring to your attention so we can all understand it and realize that we're correcting our ways by bringing it to your attention. Page 213 contains a report on long-term debt. And there's one item associated with fire station number 2, which double counts that debt. In other words, it exaggerates by 50% that number. So instead of $2,600,000, that number should be $1,300,000. So the good news is we've overstated our debt. The debt is less than you see in this page. I do have multiple copies of replacement pages for those who may want them. Maybe after we're done tonight and come down to the audience, you can ask me for them. I'll be happy to hand them out to anybody who wants that correction page. But with that said, Mary Erdai and I are here to talk about this year's proposed 2026-2027 town budget. And Mary has some words she'd like to say to kick things off.
Okay, I'd just like to thank you all for coming out tonight. It was kind of a cold and snowy day. We appreciate your presence, your interest, and your questions as they apply to the work of the town budget that's presented here. So, the next thing that I'd like to note is the actual budget process. We're starting with where we actually begin the budget process, and that is in August to September. The Selectboard provides broad budget guidance to town staff, all about numbers, values, and goals. By September, the department heads develop their budget proposals. The town manager and finance director review the budgets with department heads, noting errors, questionable revenues, spending, and the town manager makes modifications at that point. The next step is October. Revising the departmental budgets are finally combined and presented to the select board, and it's a very long process because people's presentations tend to tell us a great deal of information, both from previous years and what their needs are in the future. In October and November, the select board hears from each department head about their proposed budgets. The select board then considers the overall revenues and expenses in the budget and asks staff to make changes with an eye toward the bottom line figures. After making tough final calls on proposed spending and taxation levels, the select board adopts a general fund budget, which it will propose to the voters. And then finally, we end up in December and January where the budget is finally actually voted on by the select board to go forward to the voters. So that's the budget process. And as you see, it's at least 5 months, a little bit longer. We spend a lot of time, the staff spends a lot of time. They bring all their professionalism and their experience to the budget process during these arduous times. And it is arduous. It's a long, long time to be working with numbers. Okay, so thank you for that to the staff for all their, and the department heads who work for this, and town manager, of course. Next one is the funding obligations. This is the one that I wanted. I've been particularly interested in this myself over the years, because sometimes we don't know, or we don't think about the fact that we actually have obligations, and the obligations are right in front of us, and some of them we don't have a lot of control over. There was an instance several years ago where a member of the select board asked one of the members, can't we just have a bottom line of 0? And that staff member said, my budget is made up of people. 92% of my budget has to do with the people. So I think we have to take into consideration a lot of things, but we do have funding obligations. As you see before you, personnel costs, these are salaries, overtime, FICA, retirement, and healthcare, the MVP health insurance, which we're very lucky this year. It only went up 2%. The reimbursement accounts, retiree health care, and dental. These are all things that we are obligated to fund. We have insurance, life insurance, accidental death and dismemberment insurance, property and liability insurance, workers' compensation insurance. And then you see on the right-hand side, other operating costs like debt service, county taxes, library support, cemetery support, senior services, restricted appropriations, lease payments, fuel, all types, contracted services for mowing, plowing, cleaning, road salt and sand. And by the way, we've had difficulties with getting the salt that we need. And we've just did that at the last select board meeting because we couldn't get it from the person that or the company that we originally had contracted with. Road paving, resurfacing, asset repair, maintenance, fire alarm monitoring system, town match for grants, computer equipment, and independent auditor services. So there are a lot of funding obligations, and it's important to keep those in mind. We also, if you look at now at the pie chart, I want to make sure that you understand that this pie chart is the 2026 budget pie chart.
The current year. That's
Yes, the current year, and we just finished the budget season for 27. So my understanding from John is that our pie chart here is very similar to the one that we just finished with budget 27. So if you look at this pie chart, you can see that the largest category, and I'm not speaking against this, it is just what it is the employee wages and benefits, and I appreciate all the hard work that the employees do for this town, but it takes almost 60% of our funding obligations. If you look at the others, there's miscellaneous items, and there's an example underneath, advertising, purchase and clean uniforms, policy digitization, grant matching funds, railroad crossing fees, employee appreciation banquet. We have debt service, some of those bonds that we have that, keep going, and we retire some and move on to others. Buildings and equipment, contracted services, and recurring administrative. So if you add all of that together, it should equal 100%, and that's, what we need to do in order to keep our town going. So with that, I'm going to turn over the general fund background to John. We decided to divide this up into 2 parts.
very good. Thank you, Mary. And there we are, looking at basically the comparison between the current year, which is FY26, and the proposed budget for FY '27. I can start by saying that the current year's general fund budget is $22,382,504.79. That includes social service appropriations of $211,393. This current proposal that's before you for FY '27 includes a budget of $23,585,109.39. That's an overall spending increase of 5.4%, or roughly $1.2 million over the current year's budget. But I will hasten to say that along with that spending increase is a property tax increase of only 1.6% in the amount to be raised by taxes. And as I will discuss a little bit later, if the voters approve Article 25 on your ballot next Tuesday and transfer $137,500 from local option tax revenues, that 1.6% increase is reduced to a 0.8% increase year over year. And of course, when you boil down the numbers, a 0.8% increase would amount to a property tax increase of $12.65 on a $250,000 home. $12.65 for the year, that's the increase. Of course, it would be double that for a $500,000 home, about $25.30. So again, this proposed general fund budget includes all service organization appropriations on the assumption that you will support them, because you have in the past, and we want to recognize reality in our budget. And that this year, those social service appropriations together total $204,893. One of the first items on your ballot Tuesday will be asking whether you support the general fund budget, and that is a figure which backs out those $204,893 of general service appropriations and gets you to that figure of $23,380,216.39. With respect to non-tax revenues, we expect those to increase by 7.2%, or $261,082.87. Those are items that consist of things like state pilot, which is an acronym for payment in lieu of taxes. You may not know it, but we have a lot of state buildings in town, and instead of a property tax, they pay us payment in lieu of taxes. The state also pays the town a reimbursement to some extent for the lost value when property is put into logging or farming, which involves a lower tax rate for them, but the state reimburses us to some extent for properties put into the current use or use value program. These revenues also include delinquent tax penalty and interest, permits and licenses, state aid we get. For example, $300,000 and more from VTrans every year to help us look after our Class 2 and 3 roads. This amount includes parking revenues, interest on our deposits, fees for services that some departments charge, dispatch and ambulance fees, and some rec programs as well. Back in the current year of 2026, non-tax revenues were $3,639,190. Plus, we used a transfer of $136,916.89 in ARPA funding. Plus, the Select Board added a transfer in this current year of $1.479 million from the unassigned fund. This year, by contrast, the upcoming year that we're proposing involves proposed non-tax revenues of $3,900,272.87, plus a transfer of $1.2 million from the unassigned fund balance, again, less than the current year. Plus, this is new, a $1.1 million use of projected revenues to be generated by our new local option sales tax. Next. We can dive a little bit deeper into some of these other revenue sources that are outside property taxes. I mentioned that we have a new local option sales tax of 1%. That became effective by voter approval on July 1st, 2025. And we estimate that we're going to see roughly $1.2 million each year, each and every year of revenue from that tax, which, as you know, as voters, that's to be directed solely for property tax relief. We are also expecting to utilize just that 1.1 million of the $1.2 million that we expect to receive in this first year. We're trying to be a little bit cautious, or I should say, the select board's trying to be a little bit cautious here, only planning to use 1.1 million of what we expect to collect, which will be the 1.2 million. In terms of an unassigned fund transfer, this year we start with a balance of $2,627,425, and the select board is proposing a transfer of $1.2 million of that into the general fund, again, to bring down property tax rates. This leaves us with approximately a 6% amount as compared to the general fund budget. And between 5 and 10% is generally where fiscally prudent experts tell us we should be with respect to our unassigned fund. So by being a little bit more careful with that unassigned fund and only taking 1.2 out this year, we've allowed ourselves to build back up that balance to more than that 5%, in fact, up to 6%. So that's good fiscal prudence. Back to that local option tax on rooms, meals, and alcohol. There'll be more discussion of how that money might be used on Saturday, but suffice to say, we have more than $350,000 on account already in the bank from the tax that people pay on rooms, meals, and alcohol. And the expectation is that the voters will be the ones to decide how we use those funds. This year, the Select Board has proposed 7 ways in which the voters might authorize us to use those funds. For example, Article 19 proposes that that the voters approve the use of $50,000 toward a fourth console for our dispatch division of the police department to increase speed of response and to also allow police to take on other municipalities that pay us money for the service we provide. Article 20 involves a proposed purchase of a sidewalk snowplow and backhoe attachment for DPW for the combined cost of $50,000. The public safety complex, i.e. specifically the fire department, has proposed a mechanics storage shed for the public safety complex in the amount of $14,500. That's Article 21 on your ballot. Resurfacing and relining the sports courts at Maxfield's complex for the Parks and Rec Department, that's a $50,000 proposal, and you'll find that in Article 22. There was a committee set up to help the Bugbee Senior Center assess what kinds of immediate life and safety repairs were needed at the Bugbee Center building. And that group came up with a list of items totaling $38,000. And if you support Article 23, that funding will be available to make those important repairs and upgrades to that building. There's a modest request from the combined efforts of the Alumni Association, Hartford Alumni Association, and the 250th Anniversary Committee in the amount of $5,000 to enhance this year's version of the annual parade that we hold in town close to the 4th of July holiday. And finally, There's a proposed transfer to the general fund, again, for reduction of property taxes, as I mentioned earlier, of $137,500. And that would help us get down to that 0.8% property tax increase that we talked about earlier. Now, I want to point out that when you add those 7 items up, they total exactly $350,000. So none of you need to pick and choose which are your priorities. You can and you are encouraged to support all 7 of these ballot articles. Okay, moving on. Some of the highlights of this year's budget include the following. Often people say, well, what's the annual increase in wages? It's 4% this year. However, we do have a new clerical workers union, which consists of 9, 10, 11 clerical workers who have organized, and they negotiated a contract for 2 years, which calls for 5% for these next 2 years, the current year and next year. Health insurance premiums, as Mary pointed out, were blessedly only 2% increase. We've seen 7, 8, 9, even multiple digit increases in the past. So let's celebrate that 2% we're going to see this year, but don't count on that holding true for the future, right? In terms of personnel, there are a couple of highlights to bring to your attention. The Select Board's budget anticipates the addition of 3 positions, and one of those will be a facilities manager. As you all might know, the school district has a facilities manager, and we think that with our 10 buildings, we would benefit from having a dedicated professional who can use the eyes of a professional and the analytical abilities of a professional to help us determine what kind of funding we might need to be putting aside for building upgrades, but mostly the focus is going to be on preserving town assets. You all have supported budgets in the past to build these buildings and to preserve the assets, but we think we can do a better job of preserving their value with proactive maintenance, preventative maintenance of the kind that sometimes we have not done. So we think, again, a dedicated professional in that role should come close to paying for itself in the sense of savings by dealing with problems when they're small rather than writing big checks when neglected issues become bigger. That's the rationale. The highway department has a new director, and we have a new highway foreman, and they have big plans to improve road and structures maintenance and to have better depth on the bench for snow events. Sometimes we get sick outs with half the department down, and that really can put a cramp into our ability to deliver the kind of services we want to, especially at critical times like snow events. So the thought is that by having these 2 new additional positions, we can do a better job at road maintenance around the year. We think they do a fine job now, but hopefully they can do even better with more resources. One thing the Select Board did with their proposed budget is restore needed funding for the capital reserve accounts in the police department. Chief Kelly had come on board and identified that maybe some of those reserves hadn't been fully funded in recent years, and we want to make sure that we have the funds available for necessary equipment and to be purchasable when it's needed. One thing I want to mention also, it's not on this PowerPoint, but that the DPW has a $100,000 reserve payment toward bridge repairs. That's a new item that we're funding at $100,000 this year because, as you can imagine, the repair of bridges is an expensive proposition and we have to start somewhere. So that's an initial investment to be ready to be able to afford bridge work when it comes up on our plates. Last year there was no bridge repair funding, and so that's a $100,000 addition to the budget. Again, the last two highlights we've already mentioned. This budget, as proposed, uses $1.1 million in revenue from the new local option sales tax and uses $1.2 million in the unassigned funds to offset property taxes. Another highlight again is that we wanted to remind you that by supporting the lot articles, those are Articles 19 through 25 on Tuesday, you demonstrate that you understand that the Select Board's trying to keep property taxes low by using this other revenue source whose money has already been collected. So we again encourage you to support those lot articles. They allow us to keep your property taxes low by taking these items out of the general fund budget. As to page 9, that's just an overview or recap. Again, you're looking at a spending increase of 5.4%, but a property tax increase of only 1.6% over the current year, which again, you have the power to reduce to 0.8% if you vote in favor of Article 25 to transfer some lot funds to the general fund for tax relief. And with that, I will be happy to let you know that Mary and I are open to questions.
Thanks, John. Thanks, Mary.
Thank you.
We do have a little bit of time here for some questions. Does anybody have a question related to the town budget? If you do, just come right on down to one of the microphones. Introduce yourself. We'll take about 10 minutes here to have some questions. Yes, right here. Please introduce yourself.
I'm David Briggs from White River Junction. I'm not sure that I have a question. I was encouraged to advocate for one of the line items. Is this a good time to do that?
Sure.
Okay, this would be with respect to the $5,000 requested for the town parade. And as a grateful Hartford alum, member of the Hartford High School Alumni Association and supporter of the 250th commemoration, I would like to see the town support this and report a few interesting facts that have already come out of this initiative. I might also add that I was the first Hartford senior class to convene in this room. And I always think of it as a new room, but I did the math and it's 62 years. That's not funny.
It still has that new paint smell, David.
I mentioned grateful Hartford alum because of the start that it gave me, and I observe and participate in the various reunions over the many years with the parades that started shortly after we graduated in 1964. So it's become a really great tradition. One of the richer aspects of it is that through that devotion, we also give scholarships to Hartford grads every year. That said, however, when you consider how well Hartford grads have done across the nation, it's a very small amount of money. And our committee intends to change that. So we advocated for a better parade because it is the 250th year, but to inspire and encourage and excite our alumni to think more seriously of giving back, particularly those from around the country. The Select Board, we asked the Select Board unofficially for $10,000. We were advised to be a little more humble and also to see what we could do to match that. Well, we not only have matched a potential $5,000 allotment here, right now our fundraising without even trying is approaching $15,000. So we've tripled that, and we're excited about the potential given what Hartford alums have done across the country these years. So we're excited about this being a great parade for the 250th and to set the tone for a much more rigorous Alumni Association scholarship program.
Thank you, David.
Thanks for listening.
Thanks, Dave.
Hiya. Wow. Kathy Melisick, Wild Deer, Vermont. Quick question. Am I correct that cannabis Sales also provide some of the local option sales tax under that 1%, because I was in
Yes,
favor
in
of that.
fact, many people looked at the opportunity to tax cannabis as one of the major drivers behind the desire to impose the local option sales tax. The tragic sense that those sales were eluding us and they should pay their share of taxes.
And if I remember right, that was the only way we could get local taxes was from the cannabis, was to include it under local option sales tax.
That's my
Okay,
understanding.
thank you.
Yes.
Hi there, I'm Dennis Brown of Hartford. And I don't really have questions at this time. I'm gonna let out some of my feelings. So I guess I start out with, I'm a little bit sore, or we're sore, wife and I, from our last tax bill. This was a 33% increase. It's really hardly sustainable, and what shock. I mean, we had the reappraisal and we expected that, and in some years past, our taxes went down slightly after the reappraisal. So we thought it would be somewhere near the same, but we got stuck with that big increase, and that's without any improvements. So I thought I'd share that. I really appreciate the board's work on the budget. I have some issues with that too. One of I guess the biggest is I'm really troubled by the facilities manager, another new staff member, new to the town. And at the same time, I believe I read where we're gonna cut paving by 100,000. So I just can't, I'm really wrestling with that. And I hate seeing paving get cut to begin with, but then we're hiring yet another staff member when we're having all these increases. So I struggle with that. And then a final comment for the moment. The law, I keep hearing about the law and how this is all helping us. And I think many of you probably remember that I was against at least the sales tax, but I wasn't thrilled with rooms and meals either. But I was particularly concerned with the sales tax one. And because we just keep spending more, we have to raise more revenue and whatnot to get all this. And so we have these other schemes of getting money. I think I read recently that Stowe is proposing to increase their lot to 2%. And when this all started, I thought, well, we're going to have yet another tax, against, that we're all we have to pay for, Amazon orders and whatnot. And so, I just hope that I never see, but I would halfway see that it could happen, that in years to come that we'll spend more and then we'll want to increase the lot. So I just wanted to put those feelings out there. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dennis.
Thanks, Dennis.
May I give one brief response?
Yes.
And that is, Dennis, I appreciate what you've said about paving. When the board was wrestling with this issue of new operator positions, we did ask the DPW director, which would you rather have, these new positions or that $100,000 of paving? And that was his priority, was to have that additional labor in his department.
Yes, sir.
Laney Collins from Hartford. So I want to question about the facilities manager position that you've talked about here. What is the actual dollar amount that you projected for the budget for this?
Probably tell you in a moment, if you give me a moment. Yes, this is going to be with wages and benefits and retirement and all the other things. It's about $120,000. 50% of that is in the general fund, and other portions are delved out to the enterprise funds, where ratepayers for water, sewer chip in for that position.
So we're talking about $120,000 a year for a new employee for the town of Hartford. That's on an ongoing basis. That's understandable that there's maintenance that's been deferred for the town throughout many buildings, not addressed, neglected. There's a problem there with having so much neglect going on to start with. But my concern here is that you presented us with an alternative of, we're gonna hire this person and they're gonna take care of all these ills that we have. Has there been any consideration to an alternative of contracting out these services and saving us the benefits that come along with that? There's many companies out there that do preventative maintenance programs, could set up a preventative maintenance program, present it to the department heads. You could also have somebody come in and completely do the facilities management for the town of Hartford, and we wouldn't have to pay the benefits package on a continuing basis. Yes, it's gonna be probably a couple $100,000, but we're not gonna pay that, money continually for facilities manager year after year after year once we have a program developed. It just bothers me that you're adding another position for the town that you could, that's a very, one of those positions that could be dealt with on a contract basis for less money over the period of time necessary.
Great, thanks. Give you a chance to respond, John. I think, so I want to get to the school budget. We'll take one more question, Landy, after yours, and then we'll get back to questions on the town budget in the fourth part of the meeting. But yeah, John, do you want to respond to?
Just very briefly, just to make it absolutely clear, we're not talking about simply somebody like a custodian turning a wrench. We're talking about somebody with some real professional credentials who can help identify issues and help budget for the future in terms of our capital improvement plan. He or she should bring a lot of those talents and skills intellectually, as well as performing facilities management routine matters. So we're not talking about something that can be fully contracted out, I don't believe.
Understandable, but then you're gonna still have to contract out the services to fix the buildings. That's the point I'm getting at, is that you're still gonna have to have contract cost on top of this facilities manager. Whereas if you contracted it out to start with, you'd have a lower rate over a shorter period of time to establish a preventative maintenance program that could be carried out in-house by department heads or contracting out again to these companies that do that type of thing. It would be more advantageous, I think, in the long run to contract out for the short term to spend more money versus having a person on staff that's gonna cost us this money every year. Once we get all caught up, what's that person gonna do?
Great,
Thank you.
Thanks, Lanny. Yeah, so last question for the moment. Yes, please.
So Linda Miller, Hartford, and it's not a question. I just want to support what David Briggs had spoken to, that I truly hope that this town approves the article, I think it's 24, to the $5,000 for the 250th Commemoration Committee and the Alumni Association. We really want to make Hartford proud. So we're trying the best we can, but it's really an expensive thing to put on as a parade. So please join us on the parade.
Great, thanks, Linda. Okay, we'll have a quick change of presenters here. So John and Mary will be around in the fourth part of the meeting tonight, so additional budget questions can be directed to them at that point. So we've got, I think, Jeremy and Kathy. All right. Okay, great.
This is the dongle. Yeah,
Oh, wait, I have one. Wait, that's gonna go,
that's probably your adapter for this guy.
it's gonna go in here?
Yeah.
Okay. Extend this. I didn't make things easy for myself and just print out notes. I am in there often. Presenter view, current screen. Allow. Any advice here, Chico? What I'm not sharing appropriately? Presentation display, presenter view, is it this box?
Yes, try that.
I can't try that actually. It's not clicking.
Okay, let me see.
But that's in my notes. That's still in my notes though.
Great. And if
I've
you
got a
get
couple
to
screens
Zoom-
here. Sorry. Next year I'll just have them do it and I'll print out my notes. Oh God, I'm in the wrong drive. Okay.
Okay, so let's see. Oh, present mode from here.
Presentation display options,
All right.
presenter view.
And it might go automatically with slideshow, but we'll see. Try it. Great, it's up there. And now in Zoom,
Mhm.
you might go full screen for a second. Oh, sorry, that minimized. Okay. So, where is Zoom? Is Zoom not open? Oh, you're in the browser. Okay. Can you share your screen from the browser? There we are, yes.
Chico, are the main display and extended display reversed?
No, it's it was displaying up there. We're just trying to.
Yeah, I just can't get my,
We're in the browser mode in Zoom, not the client mode.
Gotcha. Okay. I just know that there was a time when it would make that the presentation display and that the
Yeah.
extend or the working display.
Sure.
And it was a nuisance. So I just was making sure that it wasn't doing that, like in settings.
Okay.
okay, so this is just my presentation.
Yes.
So
and
here's,
so
yeah,
choose what to
but
share.
that's my notes.
We want to share. That's going to be the notes.
Mhm.
There's not an option. Oh, click entire screen. We'll give the option open system settings, give permission. Yes, you gotta give it permission.
I shouldn't have to do that, I don't think.
Let's see. If this holds us up, we can point the camera at the screen.
Okay.
All right, yeah, let's just try and get your presentation up.
And not share on Zoom.
Yeah, it'll just be a little washed out, but people should have come in person.
I hear you. But I'm still getting, when I share to here, I'm still getting my notes.
Oh, your notes were up?
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I don't know how to do it with Google.
It's Mac.
Yeah.
Can you download it to your desktop?
What do you see there? See, but mine, it is reversed because notes are here and I don't have notes. So
Where's
it's
your display
reversed.
options here? Is that what this is?
No.
How do you reverse?
Okay, while we're waiting, how many folks are tapped for maple sugaring every year? Anybody in the room? Hands up. 2, 3. Actually, we got 3 people tapping. How many people prefer real syrup to Faco? Okay. All right, now we're going to get political. Oh, we have a hockey question. How many watch the hockey game? Which hockey game? Okay, here's our tough question of the night. Who prefers light syrup? Who prefers dark syrup? We got mostly dark. Light? Who over here makes syrup? Someone over here had a hand up. Used to. Who makes it? Who prefers dark? Okay. Well, the dark has carried the evening, so informal poll. Okay. All set?
I think so.
Great, thanks.
Good as it's gonna get. Yes. Thank you for your patience, everyone. Don't mind showing my notes, but you'll see things like, slow down, Kathy, take a breath. I'm Kathy Lemire, school board member. It was just last year I was standing at this microphone asking for your write-in vote, and here I am 1 year later, so exciting times. Tonight, I'm gonna be walking you through the proposed FY 26-27 school budget ahead of the vote next Tuesday. My goal here is simple: to help you understand how we arrived at this number, what is driving the costs, and for you to understand what a yes or no vote means. So this is I gotta change it on mine too. This budget is a level service budget, meaning the budget we are presenting to you this evening we are maintaining the services we currently provide. We are not expanding programming. We are not adding additional staffing beyond what we already operate with. This budget is about sustaining what we already have. So on the ballot, this is what you will see. A total proposed budget we are putting before the voters is roughly $58.7 million. When adjusted using the state's weighting formula, that equals $17,677.97 per weighted pupil, representing a 10.24% increase over the current year, yet below the projected 12.1 statewide increase. So how is the weighted cost per pupil calculated? Vermont does not set tax rate on total budget alone. The state uses a formula that divides education spending by our long-term weighted average. I don't know how well you can see that chart. In plain terms, the state adjusts our student count using a weighted formula, then divides education spending by that adjusted number, which is how we arrived at the $17,677.97. So what happens to our per pupil spending when the debt service is removed? For the purpose of excess spending threshold, debt service on bonds approved prior to July 1st, 2024 is excluded from the ed spending calculation. So when we remove eligible debt service, which is the bond principal and interest, we fall below the state's excess spending threshold of $16,470. And why does this matter? Because if we exceed that threshold as a district, a penalty gets added to our spending per pupil, which then would increase the tax rate. What makes up the warrant article number? On the ballot, you will see a total budget of $58.7 million. However, not every dollar in the total budget affects the tax rate. The total budget includes grants, state and federal funds. Those dollars do not drive the local tax rate. The general fund portion, approximately 46.8 million, is what affects education spending and therefore taxes. This we just thought was an interesting slide to include in how we fund education here in Hartford. Approximately 53% of our education funding comes from non-residential taxpayers, and that means businesses, commercial properties, and non-resident homeowners carry a significant portion of the education tax base. Resident taxpayers fund 31%, and the remaining 16% is from the state general ed fund. How do we compare to our neighboring districts? When compared regionally, our weighted per pupil spending is in line with neighboring districts while remaining lower than several nearby communities. Additionally, some surrounding districts are over their excess spending threshold, which will result in additional tax impacts in those communities. So what is driving this increase? The majority of the increases reflected in this proposed budget is driven by structural costs. Health insurance premiums increased by 7.4%. Salaries reflect negotiated contractual obligations. Contracted services and utilities are seeing an increase of about 3% due to inflation. And we also have compliance costs tied to state mandates, and debt service reflects bonds that were previously approved by voters. What we control versus what we don't. I wanted to take a moment to clarify something important. While the district is responsible for building the budget, there are significant components of this budget that are determined outside of the local level. Vermont uses a statewide funding formula, and once our spending per pupil is calculated, the state's yield determines how that converts into a tax rate. That yield is set at the state level, not locally. Health insurance is part of a statewide system. Premium increases are determined through negotiations and healthcare market conditions. This year, premiums increased by 7.4%, and that increase applies regardless of local budget choices. At the same time, there are areas that we do control: staffing levels, program structure, and how to allocate those resources. The district worked carefully within those constraints to build this proposal. Considering our controllables, if the budget is not approved, the reductions will come from those areas we control, ultimately staffing and programming. So what have we done to try and reduce the impact? Before finalizing this proposal, we looked carefully at where we could reduce pressure on taxpayers without compromising core services. We applied a $1.7 million surplus to reduce the overall tax impact. Some paraprofessional positions reduced last year were not restored. Ideally, we would have shifted roughly $450,000 in positions from title-funded grants into the local budget to stabilize staffing, but that was not included in order to limit spending. In fiscal year 25, computer replacements were zeroed out. In this proposal, we are reinstating $250,000 to begin getting back on track, but not fully funding where we ideally would be. Supply and equipment lines were reduced last year and were not increased in this proposal, and these decisions reflect real trade-offs. They help limit tax impact, but they do have operational consequences. Just an additional bond update. So several major safety and code-related projects have been completed, including fire alarm replacement and roofing improvements. These upgrades bring our buildings into current code compliance and improve long-term stability. Larger infrastructure projects are being phased to align with design completion, seasonal construction windows, and coordination with related projects such as PCB planning. There are multiple projects at Hartford High that are being deferred until final evaluation of the ECA process, which is the evaluation of corrective action alternatives, and we have the go-ahead from the state. To date, approximately $860,000 has been expended on completed and in progress work. Projects are moving forward as planned and within scope. These improvements are not aesthetic upgrades. They address safety systems, building integrity, and long-term operational reliability. That brings me to my last slide. And I understand that for most residents, the question ultimately becomes, what does this mean for me and my household? And rather walking through the entire formula tonight, I encourage you to visit the following link that you can find here on the budget homepage to the state's property tax calculator, so you can see how this proposal will apply to your specific situation. And if you want to dive deeper into line-by-line items and changes, please see the object summary in the annual report that you have a hard copy of or can be found online following this same link. And just one final thought that I want to offer. Thank you for taking the time to be here and to review and consider this proposal. I know that for many in our community, rising property taxes feels unsustainable, as we've already heard. And I hear that. As school board and community members, we are not immune to those same pressures. We feel the impact of rising healthcare costs, inflation, and property taxes in our own households as well. The decisions reflected in this budget were not made lightly. They reflect trade-offs, they reflect constraint, and they reflect careful consideration of how to maintain services while limiting additional impact wherever possible. At the same time, I would ask you to keep our mission in mind, to provide and ensure a caring and dynamic learning community where the intellectual development of students is our highest priority. This proposal is a level service budget. It maintains current programs and staffing. It applies surplus to reduce impact. It avoids expansion. It makes difficult choices in order to sustain what we already have. Ultimately, this decision belongs to the voters of Hartford. Our goal tonight has been to provide clarity, transparency, and context so that you can make an informed choice. Thank you for your time, your engagement, and your commitment to our schools. Thank you. Oh, just questions, I guess? Yep. Thank you, Jacob.
Okay, we can sort of tag team the microphone here. So we've got some time here for questions for Kathy and school board, and we will start right here.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Dennis Brown, Hartford. Here to share some of my feelings again. We just heard the budget, which I know you've worked very hard on, and I'm grateful for that. We heard a similar thing here for last year and probably every year before that about how this is the least we can charge you for all this. Well, right after last year, this is part of my continuing of being sore about all this tax increase, the 33% I mentioned earlier. We decided to pay the superintendent for a year's salary to not work. And that's after we trimmed everything to the max. And then we did that. So there's some soreness there. And then I sort of thought it might happen at warrant night that we might get an update on this PCBs because whoosh, boom, a bomb hit here. We're going to tear down the school, 2/3 of the school. We can't, quote this, we can't unknow this. And then we're hearing about, and maybe it's not so bad after all. Well, that's a pretty strong statement that really got my attention. And I lived here for 4 years in this building, you might say. A happy graduate, the greatest class of all, the 79s. Thank you. So I just am continuously frustrated, and I still don't know, I haven't sought out more information. I'm guilty of that, I guess, but what is going on with our school here? We're gonna tear it down, but then it's not so bad, and then, you know, this facilities manager of the school, that's I think a relatively new thing. I hadn't known of that before recent years. And then as I spoke earlier, the town's considering getting one of these. And so I'm really wondering what's happening here. That's a little bit more how I'm feeling. Thank you.
I'm on now. So first thing I would say is stay off of Facebook and attend the school board meetings. We're not going to tear down the school. The PCB issue is a real issue. We are working with the state of Vermont, but we are handcuffed by the state of Vermont, is what I would tell you. We can't make improvements without presenting an ECA, which is the corrective action plan. They have to evaluate that. They're going to go through that. They're going to tear us up. They're either going to make us encapsulate it, which there's science out there that says that that doesn't work, or they're going to make us just, you know, choose abatement, which means tear it up and tear down the school. But that's not going to happen anytime soon. I think we're all aware of that. I can tell you right now, you know, Mr. Briggs kind of made me chuckle here. He was talking about the development of this room, and I can tell you that there's soft spots on this floor that are original to this building. And I graduated in '96. When I walk into the school, I don't see anything different except for the big roll-up boiler door in front of the gym. And so when we paid the superintendent that left, I will tell you that we've basically had about 100%, maybe I would say 80% turnover of the board as of this election year. And that is why I chose to run. I was pretty frustrated with what happened there. The facilities director, well, the facilities director is Jonathan's position. There's a facilities manager that we were discussing. We've rolled that back. We've decided that role needs to be maybe tied in with some other avenues, maybe tied to security and whatnot. But I share your concerns, like where's the budget money going? But I don't see any improvements that really have happened at the school since '96, which is 30 years. These are the same chairs that I sat in, really. I mean, that's my concern. So I share that, but I'm telling you, it's a new board. Our focus here is to make sure that our students have the programs and the support that they need. And really, we want this school to last. But in order to do that, things have got to turn around. I don't know if I forgot anything in that.
Well, I guess I'll just add to that. Thank you, Jeremy. I hear your concerns in that it was at one point, oh, the school has to come down, and now we have students in the school. We are continuously monitoring. And as Jeremy said, we are constrained by what we can do by the state. You know, these mandates were pushed out to test. We've been testing, but we can't swing a sledgehammer until we get the go-ahead from the state. There's also the uncertainty with Act 73 and what that's going to look like in our district. So there's a lot of uncertainty at this moment with what PCB remediation removal is going to look like, coupled with the uncertainty of what Act 73 might look like for our district in coming years as well.
To jump in on that, if you've noticed the ropes that are in the auditorium, that's because we've had to limit our fire code capacity here due to the limits that we have in the school.
Okay.
The ropes we have to limit the actual number of people in this building or in this room itself due to the constraints of the current issues that we're facing.
Okay, we'll have, I know we have some folks waiting on this side too, so definitely stand up so I can see who's there, but we'll start next question right here.
Jeff Arnold, Wilder, Vermont. I was wondering if you could give me an update on how the $20.8 million bond has been spent so far?
Yep, that was So we have spent roughly so far 860,000, and that has gone to larger infrastructure projects. There is, if you want to see the more detailed spreadsheet, which was in my presentation, but I understand it's small, on the main budget page, there's a link that says bond and budget, and you can see the whole project of what is planning, what's been completed. What I said, we have fire alarm replacements, roofing improvements, larger infrastructure projects are being phased in to align with design completion, seasonal construction windows of when we can get those things done, and coordination with related projects such as PCB planning.
So the roofs have not been started yet on OQS and DBS?
I would say the first phases of those roofs have started, but the major construction will be done in the summertime.
And that's a fairly large expense, right?
Yes.
Like what are you looking at?
Um,
We've only spent 860,000, that's nothing out of 20 million.
Correct. I would also say,
What's the time?
for here,
span?
and again, I came in after the bond was passed, and so I learned about it from you, actually. We've covered that in a previous board meeting, what was covered so far, but while Jacob's looking that up, our issue with this building in particular is that we really can't make any improvements if we don't know what the end result of the PCB findings will be. That's the limitation there. As for the OQS and roof things, those are on plan, but you
To
can pull the
happen.
numbers on that.
Because there's a big drainage project as well, right?
It's a bigger project here than anything else that I've ever seen, Jeff.
What, the drainage?
No, drainage is a big issue for the way that the footprint of the school works. And I believe, as Jonathan has put it, it has to go into an interesting.
Does this money have to be spent, or do you have to spend all this money in a certain amount of time?
We do, as well as you know.
No, I
And
don't
if we
know.
don't,
What
we
is
pay
it? What is
if
it?
we don't,
Is there a
we pay
limit or
penalty.
not?
Yeah.
it's within 3 years.
Oh, 3
Basically,
years.
August would be 2 years.
And if you don't spend it in 3 years, then what happens?
We pay.
So
Okay, Jeff, that's a good, you've had a good series here. I got a good list of folks here.
I didn't get all my answers.
I know, it's,
What?
we'll double back for you. Next question over here.
You want me to just stand here?
No,
All right.
Jeff, let's continue keep the line moving. Thanks, Jeff.
Good evening, Tim Fariel, White River Junction. Thanks for all your work. I just had a thought and a question, which doesn't need to be answered tonight. So the thought is that when I was on the school board and we were negotiating teacher contracts back in the day, a pretty shrewd, smart lawyer in Vermont suggested that teachers in Vermont would be way better served, as would our pocketbooks, if we had created a self-funded health plan for teachers in Vermont. And I just would like you to consider revisiting that, because as you know, we're all subject to MVP, Blue Cross Blue Shield, if they're still in Vermont. And these flip-flops every year are killing us. So I just think we should really revisit that concept of perhaps self-funding a health plan for all of our teachers in Vermont. So that's the thought. And then the question is, year after year, when we review budgets, we were subject to a kind of a sheet, Jacob, that you work on, which I love. And it's indicated that as our CLA was slipping year to year, which we know it did, right? It got all the way down to 66%. The concept was that it was often presented that had our CLA been at 100%, that the tax rate would be this, right? And every time that presentation happened, the tax rate would have been significantly lower. So I'm extremely perplexed as to why we did a full townwide reassessment with a ton of work and a lot of distress out here, and we're not seeing that tax rate for Hartford plummeting. So at some point, I'd like an explanation of, I know Vermont likes to play with numbers, or Montpelier, I should say, but I'm just really perplexed as to why Hartford made the commitment to get their CLA where it belongs, and we're still seeing these rates where they are. So thank you.
Want to comment on that?
yeah, I'd like to take that one. So obviously, one of the things this year that really hurt us was the change in the long-term weighted average. I think we lost, let me pull it up here. 52.7 weighted pupils, which really dropped the number again. Like, we were all over the place, and the number was varying from December all the way to the first week of January, where we were basically getting updates every other day, but we ended up 52.7 lower. So that really hurt us this year. And of course, you look at the CLA and you go, well, it's 140, 0.89%. With the state adjusted CLA, because keep in mind, last year was the first year that they said, okay, we're going to try and get all the CLAs up to snuff here. So we're going to basically take the CLA and divide it by the state average, which changes every year. So.
Okay, great. More on that topic, I'm sure. Yes, next question right here.
Good evening. I'm Liz Bunnell from Queechee. I have 2 children at the Ottaquechee School. And, we're here to hear about the $58 million budget and vote on that in a week or so. And I am here raising some concerns and questions about equity across our elementary schools in particular. So my question is for the board, do you look at each school budget independently and ensure there are equities across staffing levels, training, support systems, so that all of our students in I'm speaking on behalf of elementary schools, but in the whole district, are getting equitable levels of service and education? And if yes, as voters, do we have access to each of those schools' budgets so that we can review those prior to the vote to understand what we're voting on for our children?
Well, I would say as a board, we're not evaluating individual school budgets. We are a policy governance board, which means we are not in the day-to-day operations of a board. As a good, well-run board, that is not the role that we play. I'm sure those budgets are available building by building, but that is not something that we as a school board are diving into when we are doing the budget.
Yeah, so if you're asking for the budget by school, I can get that posted on our website for you.
That would be amazing. Thank you.
Great, thanks, Liz. Yes, next question here.
Thank you. And thank you for everything you do here. Mike Morris, Hartford. I've got a question about your dollars per pupil. 58 million divided by 1,300 is 44,000 in my head per pupil. Where do you get 17,000 per pupil? I mean, I'm reading what's in the paper and trust the numbers.
Yep, so that number comes from our ed spending number, which is actually 37, just roughly over 37 million, and we're dividing that by the long-term weighted average to get the 17,000. When we're factoring in that, it's not the total expenditure, because some of that total expenditure includes grants, state and federal funding. So that number is, if we, oh, you're not seeing my screen anymore.
Yeah, but is the 1,300 numbers of pupils correct in that area? Is that relatively correct?
Roughly.
And you're asking for 58 million for taxpayers. It's still 44,000 per pupil in my head. How you're getting it from us?
Not all of it, because some of the revenue that's coming in is from state and federal money as well. So our general ed fund and expenditures is actually is 37.
So
37.1.
I guess I'm getting a little confused here. It doesn't take much, but so how much tax dollars are you asking from the taxpayers in Hartford?
We're asking for a total budget approval of 58.7 million.
And that all comes from the taxpayers?
No.
That's what I want to clarify.
Not all of it comes from the taxpayers. We are only taxed on the general fund expenditure budget, which is actually 46.8.
46.8.
Yeah.
17,000 still sounds low if you divide it by 1,300 in my head. I'd have to use my calculator, but it still sounds not 17,000, which you stated, per pupil. I just want to get my numbers right, so I understand how I vote.
That's good. I appreciate that, Mike. I think maybe we can clarify with some of the numbers, because I know we're talking about there's what the taxpayers are spending, what the state's kicking in, the federal, things like that. So maybe you guys can get with Mike about that, those details, or?
Well, I think all of us, we're taxpayers.
Sure, so
17,000 per pupil times 1,300 is not 37 million.
So when we're talking about the number, the 58.7 million, that's all funds. And then when we take out the 21.5 million of basically the tuitions for those programs, the offsetting revenues, and we go to you and we say, we need 37 million from you, the taxpayers.
Yes.
We take that 37 million and divide that by the 2,099.67 weighted average, and that gets us to the 17,677.
Well, where'd we go from 1,300 to 2,000? I've never seen a 2,000 figure before.
2,000 is the long-term weighted average number that we get from the state when they are weighting our pupils.
Can you just add on like how they weight the pupils, like the English learners?
It's English learners. High school students are weighted different than elementary students versus special ed students, middle school students, right?
Yes.
And so that number is provided to us from the state.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mike. Okay, in order to keep the meeting moving along to the third part, we'll take two more questions from you two right here, and then we'll move on to our next section. So, yes, Nick, go ahead.
Thanks. Hi, Kim Souza, Hartford, Vermont, and thank you all for this presentation. Something I've thought of in the past, and your remarks reminded me of it, was, is there a world in which there is one facilities manager position that is shared between the town and the school?
That's a good question.
Because I heard you reference like maybe scaling back the scope of the.
Yeah, that position was put on pause for us. And it's more because of a need in other areas, and also because of the constraints that we're facing with the current budget.
Okay, well, and anyway, I
like that idea.
think that it would be worth exploring on both the town and the schools side. Thanks.
Okay, great. Last question for this section.
Terry Perry from Hartford. So I guess I'm kind of here to just speak in agreement about the tax rates that are just killing us. When I grew up, we were taught to spend within our limits, and we were taught to focus on what you need, not what you want. And while I hear many parents say they want the best for their children, and I so appreciate that because our children should be cared for in that fashion, I don't think the taxpayers should have to pay all of those costs to make it the best for every child. Our responsibility as taxpayers is to provide our children with a basic education. And if they want extra, the parents who want them to have extra should be paying for it. So while I appreciate that you didn't increase anything when you were thinking about this budget, maybe it's time to start thinking about decreasing and getting to a spot where we're focusing on what we need to have. I think this country, this state, this town has forgotten what it means to think about needs and not wants. We've gotten very confused about the difference. And while 58 million, you're saying isn't coming from the taxpayers, it is. Who pays those federal dollars? Who pays the state dollars? All that comes out of our pocket in one form or fashion. So while it may not be out of the state tax or the town property tax, we're all paying it. Our income taxes, our vehicle taxes, our federal taxes, it's still our money. And I think we need to start thinking very carefully about how we're spending every dollar beyond just not spending more. We need to start thinking about what do we really need. That's all.
Great, thank you, Terry. Okay, that concludes the second section of the meeting here. We're going to take 5 minutes, kind of rearrange the stage, talk amongst yourselves, and then we will have a chance to hear from our candidates for local office. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, please come back to your seats when you have a chance. Okay, we're going to continue ahead with the next section of our meeting. We have, oh, Tim, you're already up, okay. Okay, we have a number of offices up for election for voting a week from today. So we have a number of offices that are where someone is running unopposed. And so I will ask those folks to come up first. So we'll get them kind of up on the stage. We have a couple of seats are up on the school board. One is for a 2-year seat, and we have a candidate, Daniel Schapira. Daniel, are you here? Yes, great. Come right up here to this microphone. Right here is great. And take 4 minutes to introduce yourself, and then you can grab a seat here on the stage.
That's great, thank you.
Thank you. Just turn this to wherever.
All right. Let's do this. About 10 years ago, 50 states were ranked by educational outcomes. It was a snapshot in time. If we were to look at one state that was in the top 10 nationally, it, as one might expect, was spending among the top 10 in dollars per student. We could also look at another state, one near the bottom of educational outcomes. And unsurprisingly, it was spending among the least. Naturally, the world keeps moving. 10 years later, we take another snapshot. We look at the picture now. The first state spending, still among the top. In fact, it's spending about double what that second state is spending. But something really important has changed. The first state's fourth graders are now reading below national average. Meanwhile, the second state's fourth graders, they're in the top 10. Think about that. The state spending among the least is vastly outperforming the state spending among the most. Why is that? The first state is Vermont. The second state is Mississippi. Mississippi didn't find more money. They embraced evidence-based policies like science of reading. They focused on hard data. They succeeded through strong accountability, high expectations, and relentless focus. Smart leadership can change outcomes, and that's why I'm running for the Hartford School Board. Hello, everyone. My name is Daniel. I am the parent of 2 students in the district. I started my career in management consulting, got my MBA from NYU, and spent almost 2 decades at large multinational corporations. Today, I advise businesses to run more efficiently and profitably. And I want to bring that discipline to our schools because we face real financial challenges, aging buildings with PCBs, rising pension and healthcare costs, unfunded mandates from Montpelier. We can't fix these with short-term optics, and we certainly can't fix them by raising our taxes even more. We need rigorous financial analysis. We need Montpelier to respect local control because Hartford's money should serve Hartford's kids. I love this community, but we have to be honest. We're paying top dollar, and we're not getting top dollar results. So let's make sure our teachers are supported, our buildings are safe, and our kids are getting the education they deserve. Let's make Hartford schools the example other towns look to. I'm Daniel, and I'd be honored to have your vote.
Okay, there's a 3-year seat on the school board that nobody has filed for. I believe that there is a write-in candidate and that we will hear from that person when we get to the Q&A. So these are the 2 seats on the school board that are up for election. On the town side, we have an incumbent candidate for our town treasurer. Joe, do you wish to say anything tonight, or do you? Yeah. Come on up.
And I just want to say, since I'm also a state senator, I voted against Act 73. So don't, you know, don't kill the messenger. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Joe Major, and I have the privilege of serving as the Hartford Town Treasurer. And I know when you hear treasurer, probably your heart doesn't go racing with excitement. No one has ever said, wow, let me hear him talk about municipal accounting. But tonight I promise to make at least it mildly entertaining. The job of the town treasurer is straightforward in theory and practicality. I'm responsible for managing the school system and town's finances, making sure your tax dollars are received, recorded, invested responsibly, and paid out accurately to keep our community running. That means paying our vendors, managing payroll, reconciling accounts, tracking investments, safeguarding public funds, and working closely with the school board, select board, town manager, school superintendent, and auditors to ensure transparency and accountability. In short, I make sure the numbers add up, the bills get paid, and the town doesn't accidentally buy a fire truck on credit card with airline miles. But beyond spreadsheets and reconciliation, the role is about trust. The treasurer is the steward of public funds. Every dollar that comes in belongs to the people of Hartford, and it is my responsibility to treat it with care, integrity, and common sense. That means strong internal controls, clear reporting, and always remembering that spending your money is not monopoly money. It's not the flashiest position on the ballot, but it is one that is important. When the financial foundation is solid, everything else that we care about, public safety, schools, infrastructure, has the support that it needs. So while I may not be promising fireworks tonight, I can promise you balanced accounts, responsible oversight, and maybe the occasional thrilling bank reconciliation. I also want to thank a few people that you may not know in both the town and school finance department. Jacob Vezina that you saw earlier, Kim DeMont, Nicole Dexter, Alicia St. George, Emily Taylor, Jamie Goodwin, and on the town side, Florentina Rollins, who has been a rock through transition on the town side in the finance department. I want to thank all these people because you do not know them, but they are the people who keep this town running. And I also want to thank Gail Alstrom. She is the former town finance director, and for 7 years, she was the force behind the scenes, keeping us updated with audits, budgeting, and the day-to-day operations. And she will be missed. So thank you for your time tonight, and thank you for caring enough about Hartford to be here this evening.
Thank you, Joe. Okay, we have an empty spot for the West Hartford Library. We do have a candidate for a 5-year term on the West Hartford Library Board, and that is Torrelee Fisher-Sass. Are you here? Okay, not present this evening. Okay, for the select board, we have a number of seats that we'll be electing. One is a 3-year seat. We have one person running for the spot, and that is Mike Eigenbrode, if I pronounced that correctly. Thanks, Mike.
Spring is only 25 days away, just FYI. How's it going? Hi, neighbors. For those of you that don't know me, I'm Mike Eigenbrode, and I'm running for the 3-year seat on the select board. I currently work for Co-op Food Stores, aka Hanover Consumer Cooperative Society. I'm in marketing, and I serve on their board of directors as well. I really love the local food system, and I do my best to support all our awesome local producers. Chuck. I'm running on a post for my seat, so you're kind of stuck with me. But I don't take that as a free pass. I'm not running because I think I have all the answers to the challenges Hartford is facing. I'm running because I care about this cool little town, and I have a desire to be more involved in developing creative solutions to the various issues we face. Oops, sorry about that. I'd like us to keep focusing on the basics with a synergistic approach, taking care of infrastructure, being responsible with money, planning carefully. I think all the good decisions take time, but I also think we can do more to make this town feel alive. I'd love to see more exciting community events, more trees, more green space in downtown White River Junction. They sound like small things, but I think they make a real big difference when you're actually in town. I've lived here for a while. I work here. I'm currently kind of building some sort of millennial lifestyle in a really unaffordable tiny studio apartment in White River Junction. But yeah, the place really does matter to me. I think local government is important. It's where our decisions kind of hit home. It's the roads, the taxes, the parks, housing, small businesses. It's not abstract stuff. It's everyday things that matter to us and everybody in this room. I'm not going to pretend like I'm some sort of policy expert. I'm smart, maybe not the smartest person in the room, but I can promise that I'll show up prepared, I'll ask questions, and I'll keep an open mind. I think that goes a long way. I want to hear from people who agree with me, people who don't agree with me. It's all very important. At the end of the day, I'm just kind of a regular Upper Valley dude, and I care about the community, and I want to help, and I'm willing to put in the time and the effort to do my best and represent everyone fairly. I appreciate you all being here, and thanks for the chance to serve on the board.
Great, thank you, Mike. Okay, that brings us to, we have 2 seats on the select board, 2-year terms, and we have 3 people running. And so we're gonna get a chance to hear from all 3 of them this evening. And when we have multiple candidates for one spot, I pull out my fake real hat, or it's my real fake hat, and I draw names out so we can hear from people in whatever order the hat suggests. So this is for a 2-year seat on the select board. And first we will hear from Ashley Andreas.
Awesome, thank you. Hi, everyone. My name is Ashley Andreas. It's a weird one. PA Dutch. And I'm running for re-election for a 2-year term. I stood up here about 1 year ago today and told you a little bit about myself, what it was like to overcome adversity and settle into adulthood as a young person here in Hartford. How the amazing resources and support networks we have in Hartford and across the Upper Valley carried me through hard times as a young single mother, and how I found my footing, built my career in construction management, got married, and bought a home. Shockingly, in this economy. My story and who I am is important, but tonight I wanted to talk more about my time on the board so far and why I'm seeking re-election. The last year has been an amazing learning experience. I can recall many ups and downs. There were moments when I felt like everything was going great and I was part of some real progress,
And there were moments where my work felt invisible and impossible. Some key takeaways from my first term are: 1, everything is at least 10 times more nuanced than you would expect it to be. Change takes time, and while it's absolutely needed in many areas, it is not as easy as flipping a switch. You need some tenacity, that is persistent determination, and you also need to build understanding and coalitions. 2, we have an amazing dedicated staff and a great board right now. Thank you. It's been a really long time since I've seen a group of folks get to work on really big, complex topics with so much mutual respect and commitment to mission. We don't always agree. In fact, I think this current board has a great diversity of thoughts and perspectives, but we all share a passion for doing the right thing for the residents of Hartford. It has been an honor to serve with this board, and if you'll vote for me on March 3rd, I look forward to continuing to work with them. 3, we are up against some massive systemic challenges. Federal and state funding cuts are putting pressure and obligations on municipalities all across the state and probably the country. It is so important that we name this upriver issue, but also that we adapt as much as we can and develop resiliency. I want to continue focusing on budgeting for programs and services that residents rely on and monitoring the performance of those services and our shortcomings. I also hope as individuals, we can put pressure on our statewide legislators and congressional delegates to fund healthcare, housing, education, and social services, not corporate tax breaks, detention centers, and war. We need those dollars in our community working for the taxpayers. Some initiatives that I am excited about are planning for solid waste. I was and am still a huge advocate for the curbside recycling program. And while my initiative to get it on the ballot next week did not have the votes to pass, I do know that other board members are committed to working towards a long-term solution for how we handle solid waste in Hartford. I also want to dive into public safety and collaborate on ways to deploy more services. It is crucial for people in crisis and for our budget that we continue to work alongside Hartford Police and Fire, residents, and service providers to come up with solutions for the very visible issues we see every day in our community. Lastly, leadership has taken to heart that residents do not feel heard. I am excited about the community engagement efforts that this current board has in the pipeline, and I want to see those initiatives through. I hope you're happy with my service so far and that you'll vote for me on Tuesday. Thank you.
Thank you, Ashley. Okay, reach into the magic hat. Our second candidate for the 2-year seat will be Jeanette Sharkey Potter.
I am not a politician. So I was a little, I'm running for this seat. I didn't know who I was running against, and I really actually would probably vote for both of you. So that's probably why I'm a bad politician. I think I may change it up and write for the write-in for 3 years. But either way, I want to bring up some stuff. I was kind of miffed a little bit. They put me in the paper as a newcomer, and I was like, wait a second, like I was hanging out on South Main Street with my great-grandmother in the 80s. Like, I'm not a newcomer. But I love this town. I've been I graduated in 98 with my lovely husband. And this was the first town in 92 that I came to that I could play women's sports. Prior to that, I got to play with all the boys in all the sports. So that was a big thing. I work at the school now as a counselor. I loved it so much I came back. It made a huge impact on me. And basically why I'm running, somebody asked me, what drum are you beating or what axe do you have to grind? I'm like, anybody who knows me knows I'm going to my own drummer. There's no specific drum, but the the reason I ran was because I love this town. And I think we need people in positions of power, like the select board, that have been here for a little bit and know some history. I also would bring some expertise. I've worked in town actually since 2000 in nonprofits. So I have a degree in nonprofit management and psychology and marriage and family therapy. So anyway, I have a real passion for the youth of town and for our most vulnerable, which I consider to be our youth and our elderly. And I am a pretty creative person and have creative ideas. Maybe not so great with the follow through, but I think we have some really wonderful town employees that can do the do the follow through part. Yeah, I think I'd do a pretty okay job. So I also want to just put out here that I'm doing this also because I have kids and I also work with the youth of town, and it wasn't a bet, but it was like, you can do this. So I'm kind of doing this to like show people like anybody can do this. And there's lots of people, when I was going to get my petition signed, I didn't know what I was doing, and people were like, are you sure? Are you crazy? Like, are you sure? Like, good luck, with an eye roll. And I think that's pretty sad. Like, I think we should be excited to run. We shouldn't be scared to run. So I'm just trying to set a good example for people to run. If I can do it, anybody can. So thanks.
Great, thank you, Jeanette. Okay, our third candidate for the 2-year seat is Tim Fariel.
Good evening, everybody. Thank you for coming out. I thought I'd start the evening with a kind of a silly story because it's one of my favorites. When I first moved to Hartford, well, actually after I had lived at Woodhaven Condos, and then I fortunately, as you say, bought a house, which I probably couldn't do now because of our prices. But it's a wonderful house, and I'm very proud of it. It's the end of Worcester Avenue, if you know where that is. And I had one of the most dear, beautiful, wonderful neighbors in the world. Her name was Carol Blake. And she had many, many virtues, but one of her best virtues was her damn New England donuts. God, were they good. And the one thing that I was kind of perplexed by when I first moved into the house was like, and I hope I don't get DPW pissed off at me tonight, but I would come out and I'd be like, wow, the plow is already plowing Worcester Avenue. That's incredible. It's 5:30 in the morning and they have all these roads to plow. Why does Worcester Avenue get this white glove first hit treatment? So I went out one morning and I was shoveling early and I kind of looked across the way at Carol's garage, and hanging off the garage door was a bag of steaming donuts. I'm like, this feels a little corrupt to me. But, you go with it, I mean, if we get clean streets and good donuts, I guess we're doing pretty well. So anyway, that's my story. So I'll start with my formal speech. Good evening. Thank you for being here tonight and being part of this messy but valid thing we call democracy. I'm presenting myself here as a candidate for the 2-year seat on the Select Board after serving as interim board member for a vacancy created 7 months ago. There have been several observations serving in this role so far that I think are worth sharing with each of you for perspective. The significant dedication, hard work, and complexity that goes into running the town of Hartford. 2, what may appear easy on the surface is often not. And 3, there is tremendous value in listening to alternative viewpoints before making important decisions. We get better outcomes when we seek collaborative solutions. I'll tell you a little bit about me. My family of 7, when I was a child, moved to Vermont in 1971, leaving New York suburban life for a life in a rural, very small town, Brownsville, Vermont. Your childhood shapes your views of the world, and I feel very fortunate growing up in a time that now seems innocent, perhaps naive, but it gave me some core principles that I still try to adhere to in my daily life. After graduating from Windsor High School in 1981, I had a vision that I would never move back, never marry, and never have children. Well, I'm 0 for 3 on those proclamations. So I returned here after college and lived in Heartland for 14 years and here in Hartford for 23. And I've been married for 36 years to an awesome woman in the audience and have 2 daughters who are proud graduates of Hartford High School. My working life has been quite diverse, from early digital mapping to sheep farming, food business, education, real estate, construction, and facilities management. A bit of a Forrest Gump joyride, but we'll go with it. I have served on the school board and numerous other boards and committees throughout the Upper Valley. I enjoy participating in and contributing to the governance of our town. I think we have many more challenges ahead to find suitable balance between creating a vibrant and sustainable community while exercising fiscal restraint. Candidly, I think all the people running for open positions are capable and suitable choices, so I suggest that you come to vote March 3rd, but also consider other ways to engage and participate in the challenges we face as a community. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Tim. One more round of applause for these folks for putting themselves up. Okay, we have a chance to ask questions of our candidates. So if you have a question in mind, you can come on up to the microphones. I'll kind of get a sense of how many people we have and kind of how fast we're moving. Feel free to address a question to 1 or 2 candidates or 1 position, and if there's time, we can have others weigh in as well. So please introduce yourself and get us started.
Hi, Kathy Malisic. I actually had a question for each select board candidate, but I may, if that's not okay, got it. I'm curious whether you would be in favor of reinstating impact fees for developers. They were suspended in 2017, I believe, and suspended for almost 9 years. That wouldn't be like a suspension in school for a week. They've been suspended for a long time now. And if I remember right, there was a bit of a developer hissy fit involving the parking lot downtown when that happened. But I am curious whether, especially given housing issues and our infrastructure, whether you would be in favor of reinstating impact fees. Thank you.
Great, select board candidates.
Sure. Yeah, that's a good question, Kathy. Is this on? Can you hear me?
Yes.
I definitely see the value in having that conversation. And because we haven't had impact fees in the time that I've been on the board, I don't know all of the arguments in favor, for, and against. And I'm sure there are some good reasons why we decided to suspend them, and we want to encourage development and make it easier for people to develop in Hartford. But I also do see the burden that it does have when we have especially large developments that aren't paying an upfront cost for the wear and tear on the infrastructure. So yeah, I can't say, I'm sorry to waffle, but I don't have a hard yes or no, but I think that we should have the conversation as a board.
Hi. So I feel like unfortunately I don't know enough about impact fees to comment on this. I'm kind of completely outside of what the impact would be and how it helps developers and how it impacts developers. So I guess I don't have a good answer at this point in time.
That's harsh. I'm against impact fees. When I was on the school board, we had them. I don't think they really work as a kind of a fiscal model. Before we had Act 60 in Vermont for education funding, every town in America probably was encouraged to grow, and Hartford's grown a lot, right? We have auto dealers that are pegged at $3 million on the tax rolls and so on and so forth. So the funding stuff is kind of weird anyway. And I just feel like, this idea that I still think we should be attracting businesses and growth, if you will. That's sensible growth. But I just don't see impact fees as a working strategy for saying, well, you're coming here with this particular asset or entity or whatever. We have to hire this and that and do that because you're showing up. I just don't think it works. I think we should come up with another strategy.
Jeanette, you want to speak to that, or you want to skip?
I agree with Tim.
Okay.
I have no idea what these are. And that's one thing. I'm brutally honest, but I think I would have to research it more. But I think we need to slow the development and growth. And I think that's part of our sustainability is we need to think about what are the real impacts. So beyond impact fees, I think we need to kind of tap the brakes on the growth. We've grown phenomenally since I moved into White River in 2007, which is great. My house is worth more than I ever thought it could be worth. However, I think with that comes some growing pains that we do need to slow the growth a little bit. So.
Okay, great. Next question.
Yeah, I'm Marcy Bartlett and Wilder, and I have water, but it's over there. Just for the record, John. So I have a couple of questions, but there was one about water, which that's not going to be able to be addressed at this point. But I have printed out select board minutes. See how wonky this gets? From February 3rd, Ashley Andreas liked the idea of safety plans as a prerequisite for entities asking for money and grants. John Haverstock, town manager, questioned if this is under the select board's purview. Now, if you have been following the conversation about safety at housing complexes that the town has helped move along and has seen built and dedicated, and residents are now there's a public safety concern that's been a thread in these different conversations at select board meetings, and these folks know that, and many of you do too. But as the conversations progress from meeting to meeting, public comment, here we are about to have a vote on new people coming and some leaving perhaps. That conversation is something that could get easily lost in the shuffle. It's really important that we not lose that thread. I've been speaking about water in every select board cycle for 7 years. It isn't fun. It's a little tedious, I must admit, but it's really valuable. And after a lot of hard slogging, we've actually got it on a bond article that'll help benefit the town. It's not going to be fun to pay for it, but this is what it's taken, and it feels really good to get that far. It's really important that we not drop the ball in a conversation that is going to have the implications it does. So shortly after Ashley Andreas said that, John Hafner echoed his support for her comment on safety plans and previous comments of possibility of reinstating impact fees. Now, my understanding is the question about impact fees had to do with repetitive services being going to some of these places that repeatedly need the assistance of police and fire, and expenditure of resources repetitively for that need that gets presented pretty frequently. That was an integral part of that conversation about Twin Pines and a process of development that they want to see approved. That was the 3rd of February. And then on the 17th of February, consider applying for VCDP grant funding for affordable housing project of 444 Sykes Mountain Ave. So here's the text of the motion. First of all, if the safety component is not necessarily part of the select board's purview, how will we accomplish that goal of building protection and safety into this, particularly with an election cycle before us? It's complicated, I'm sorry. Select Board member Miranda Dupree made the motion to approve submittal of a VCDP grant application for that process. Sykes Mountain Ave multifamily housing with the development of a task force to develop a safety plan and reporting process demonstrating meaningful collaboration with local social service agencies for the property as a contingency of the grants review at the June 2026 VCDP board meeting. That's a lot of words, especially for the folks who are trying to decipher it when you're trying to follow the thread, okay? And authorize the town manager to take all necessary actions to complete and submit the process, okay? One person presented, seconded, somebody seconded, all were in favor and the motion passed, okay. How are we going to assure that this component of safety isn't lost if that were to be funded and the grant funded?
Great, thank you, Marcy. That's a good summary question right there. So select board candidates want to speak to that? Tim, you got your hand? Yep.
Yeah, I'll speak to that. Number one, I honestly think Twin Pines has done a lot of great work in our town, and I want to continue to feel that way. And we have clearly heard the concerns around some of their properties and the management of those and the challenges it brings. But I still feel like we should remain committed to their work because I think it's good work. It was a little bit of an odd moment because we had to append a requirement on an application that was pretty far down the road. And that requirement is, and we're sticking to it, I'm pretty confident of the board as it sits at the moment, that grant will not go through unless we gain a tremendous amount of confidence that this kind of understanding, and I would expect it may even come in the form of an MOU or something of that sort. I'm not a lawyer, thank God. But the idea is that we are indeed appending with this upcoming project some stipulations and requirements that they meet. Now, what I said the other night was I think we also have some more homework related to all projects, rental housing in general in Hartford, that we have some work to do. Because arguably, coming in front of the select board, that work would have already been done, and then the grant would have been a click-through, would have been a financial decision, not all these other layers, which are pertinent layers. So I appreciate all the voices, by the way, that came the other night or whatever meeting it was and spoke with us. But I just want to emphasize that we'll stick to that. We'll keep that thread because that thread's going to be important moving forward on other projects and existing things, and including honestly our low barrier shelter, which we all know is arriving. So I hope that answered that question. Thank you.
Yeah, I can speak to that. Yeah, I think I used the word tenacity in my intro speech, and to get meaningful change, like the change that we proposed in that meeting and in that motion, it involves the long game, and it's keeping all of these different balls in the air and in motion and not letting them drop and slip through the cracks along the way. So I know that myself personally am very dedicated to that the formation of that safety plan and the other agreements and hopefully work and improvements that will come along with that, and that we are forming a task force that will include at least one board member as well as service providers, staff from the organization applying for the grant, Twin Pines. And so I think that for us, creating that task force as part of the motion was the guarantee that we could get that we weren't going to be able to forget about this for 3 months and then in June say, oh yeah, did we ever do that safety plan? So yeah, I think continuing to work collaboratively with HPD and the fire department as well as really, I really want to engage more service providers, because I think that we have resources in the Upper Valley that are already funded. It's not perfect. We need a lot more resources, but I really want to like put them to work and make connections to help folks. So I hope that answers your question.
Anybody else want to speak to Marcy's question?
I will. I think we're approaching the development wrong. I looked up today just in case I wanted to Airbnb a place in Queechee this weekend. There's 48 Airbnbs in Queechee alone available this weekend. That is a problem. Like we don't need to build more. We need to assess what we currently have, and perhaps as a select board, we need to say no to Airbnbs in town or tax the heck out of them. Sorry, folks, but people that have money some of these are like $4,000 for the weekend. They were posh. I was like, whoa, this is great. See how the other half live. But I think we have enough housing. I think the system is broken. So I don't think we just need to keep building more. I think we need to assess what we have and then regulate or, increase the market, I guess, right? Supply and demand. So there's just not enough supply right now because the current housing that we have available, and I didn't do the point in time. I wanted to Google that too. I didn't get to it, but the point in time is just how many people are unhoused in town at any given night or day, and I have to imagine it's probably about that. Where was I going with this? No, I don't think we need to build more stuff. I think we need to use what we have efficiently and effectively.
Great, thanks, Gina. Mike, want to speak to that? Or
Sure.
Skip? Yeah.
So I'm playing some catch up with the situation with Twin Pines and the Upper Valley. I do think we should continue to support Twin Pines housing. I think we need more housing to be built, but we should hold them to a standard. They should be supporting these properties that they're popping up and the people that live in them. It's very important that they don't just kind of place things down and then move on to the next thing. And it sounds like the board right now is pushing for that and, kind of holding them accountable for what needs to happen. So I would support that and kind of continue to hold that thread and keep the plates spinning in the air and whatever other metaphor that anybody wants to come up with.
Okay, next question. We had one over here. Yes.
Hi, I'm Ida Griesmer. I live in Wilder. Just briefly, Marcy, I love that you read the meeting minutes. That's incredible. I do want to give a brief shout out to the Valley News coverage of the Twin Pines. I know, you're amazing. But the Valley News did write 2 excellent articles that were concise and descriptive and summarized the issue well, that covered our past 2 meetings on this. And I appreciated that because we know that we were not concise in our meetings. We like to talk it through as a board. Okay, so Jeanette, I wanted to speak to you and thank you for coming up and putting your hat in the ring. I really appreciate it. I really loved learning more about your background at the Bug Bee event that was this past week. That was not recorded, was it, Chuck? But
Unfortunately, no.
yeah, I don't know. For future years, the Bug Bee Center always holds a candidate forum that is wonderful. It's a little less formal and it just, get to know the people. So it's nice to learn about Tim and Jeanette. So my question, so you're probably aware that in the past 2 years, we've had 2 board members resign before they complete their full terms. And as a board, we had to put time and effort into thinking about how and when to fill those positions. And so just, sensing a little bit of like your hesitancy about the role, and in your candidate bio, you said something like, I do not want to be on the select board, and I've been avoiding this for years. So I just wanted to see if you could like say anything about your confidence level that if you are elected, and I think, you know, you'd be a wonderful contributor to the board. If you are elected, what's your confidence that you would complete a full term?
I'm not moving anywhere. I've thought about selling my house, but we wouldn't be able to move anywhere else unless we did the tiny home thing. But anyway, no, we're not moving. We're not going anywhere. And I'm very lighthearted, and so that does come off as like ambivalent about the process. But no, if I was elected, I would definitely fulfill the role to the best of my ability. So thank you for that question.
Okay, next question right over here.
Thank you all so much for coming and for being here and running and supporting our vibrant democracy here in Hartford. Really appreciate all of you. I have a question.
Just introduce yourself.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I'm Jimmy Coleman, White River Junction. I have a question about mainly those running for select board, your thoughts on Article 30, which will be coming up for a vote on Saturday. And I thought I could just read it really quick, just so everyone's on the same page. So it is to support a pledge that reads, "We affirm our commitment to freedom, justice, and equality for the Palestinian people and all people. We oppose all forms of racism, bigotry, discrimination, and oppression. And we declare ourselves an apartheid-free community. And to that end, we pledge to join others in working to end all support to Israel's apartheid regime, settler colonialism, and military occupation." So I'd love to hear thoughts. Are you voting in support or not? Thank you.
Question for select board candidates.
Oh, sure, I'll hop in. So I think Article 30 doesn't go far enough. I don't like that it calls out Palestine, and the reason I said at the Bugbee Center is because, like, I think about the Congo, and we are giving them billions of dollars. They've been decades. There's African countries that have been decimated with defined genocides for decades. It feels icky to me to just say, like, we're calling out this one thing. I think it's I worry about jumping on the bandwagon. However, I don't think it goes far enough. I take Palestine out of that, and I think we should have a statement. The school had a very good, clear statement about we are anti-racism. You actually can go around this hall and look. There's a big thing on the wall that says that statement. I think that would be a great thing for our town to do. I just hate calling out one international crisis and not. I feel like it minimizes the others for me. I do think it speaks to looking at our procurement policies. And I think that would be a good idea to, I was early 90s Vermont. I'm sure some of you, if you're around, it was buy Vermont first, was ingrained in my head as a kid. I think we should focus on divestment and investment in our local economy and trying to support local they have B corporations that are like good ethical corporations. I think we should try and purchase from those whenever possible. So I think the procurement thing, and but I feel like it doesn't go far enough, and I don't like that it just outlines. I also think commenting on international policy is really not within this role, and if I wanted to do that, I'd probably I wouldn't run against Bernie, but that's where that I think those are, I'm going to give to international international nonprofits, and I'm going to write to my senator. I don't think this is the place to do that.
Yeah, I support. I'll vote yes on the ballot measure. I think that it's important that as a community, we are allowed to take moral stances on issues that go beyond our geographic walls, and I'd also agree with Jeanette that like it doesn't go far enough in some ways. And the biggest concern that I have is how will the board and the town staff fulfill that pledge, right? Because if we're gonna make the pledge, we need to like stand up for it in the future and continue to support it. And the procurement is a huge thing. There are just companies that are almost impossible to escape. Like Cisco is probably on the list of those companies that would be on the divest list. And I don't think there is like a viable solution for the products that they sell. But it's something that could be looked into, and I'm sure there is a demand for companies like Jeanette was saying that are B Corp certified, that are doing the right thing. So I think it's a good initiative and a good goal for us to have. I think it's okay to say that genocide is bad. I think it's okay for it to be on the ballot for the voters. I kind of like that it's a ballot item, although I did support it when it came before the board last year and earlier this year. But yeah, that's a long-winded answer to say that I hope that we don't drop the ball on that, and that the residents, we've had a lot of residents come to the board about this over the last 2 years. And I know there are some active groups around this issue and other global issues that will help work with the board to actually follow through on what that looks like. And also that there are other communities that are signing on to this pledge, and that it's not a Hartford initiative, it's a statewide and maybe even across multiple state initiatives. So we will be able to see what other places are doing to live up to the resolution. Thanks.
Yes, I would vote yes on Article 30. It would make sense to kind of expand the definition of what's in the article. But I think it's important to speak up against this particular genocide that's happening right now. Again, I agree with Ashley. I don't know how we're going to make sure that we're following through with any of this. Some of it feels like it's just there to kind of make us feel a little bit warm and fuzzy, like we're doing something important. But it's a good thing, all in all. As far as the BDS stuff and I feel like due to my other board work, I can't speak fully on that. So I'm probably just gonna have to leave it be, but yes, I would vote for Article 30.
It's a tough one for me for a couple of reasons. One reason is that leading up to that initiative, I thought we did sloppy work. We didn't have it on our agenda, and we didn't fulfill the obligations of a petition. And I think our petition requirements are too arduous, to be honest with you. I think we should, I don't know, what is it, 300 signatures, which I tried to get 30 and it took me a while. So, and I'm not being flippant about this Gaza/West Bank situation. I think obviously Israel could have done much different decision-making around this horrible situation. But I also think, as someone else has said, that it's all over the world, right? We have things in Sudan, we have things all over the place that are a mess. And for me, I've been doing a little bit of self-reflection as a U.S. citizen, because I'm not particularly proud of what we do sometimes. So it's really hard to suggest that we should be passing judgment or saying, oh, you shouldn't be doing that, when we do some of this bad stuff, or we have historically. So I think it's one of those funny things for me where, we're kind of passing judgment and saying, oh, Israel, you're doing bad things and blah, blah, blah. And again, I'm not trying to lighten this horrible, horrific situation, but we got plenty of other examples, and I'm just not sure, as you say, where the conversation should lie and where we would have the most impact in that situation.
Yes, next question.
Okay, that was long-winded. Let's give Daniel a chance to speak now. All right. After all, it's the school budget that is 3 times the town budget. That's where all the money is spent.
We'll catch up eventually.
Better not. I'd just like to hear you expand on how you plan on bringing costs down and getting skills up, or?
Yeah, so I'm obviously coming in as an outsider on this budget, but the reason I'm running is there are other states, other communities, other places that are spending more, as much, less than we are. It's about the outcomes that we're getting for the money we spend. You want to buy a Cadillac? Buy a Cadillac. You want to buy a Hyundai? Buy a Hyundai. But what are the outcomes that we're getting? And that's where I'm going to focus on, is if we want to spend top dollar and the voters want that, let's do it. The voters want to spend whatever Montpelier says is the absolute basic minimum by law we have to provide our children. That's up to the voters. But how does that money get spent? Is it wise? Is it getting the outcomes, or is it just getting outputs? And that's what I'm going to look for.
You know, the problem is, you know, the way the board is set up with policy governance, they don't let you micromanage the way money is spent or how things are done at the school at all. Did you realize that?
Well, you look at a corporation, and something I'm familiar with. You've got the board of directors. The board of directors is not day-to-day managing the company. It's the CEO who's managing the company. But the board of directors is setting and approving strategy and general operations, general budget, and providing guidance and direction to the company, to the C-suite. And that's the kind of responsibility I feel the board has, is to say, this is what we want for our students. It's your job to get us there.
Right. Thanks.
Okay. Thanks, Jeff. Next question, right over here.
Tad Montgomery Wilder. I want to just give a couple points of information about the facility manager position. I was the facility manager, energy and facilities manager for the city of Lebanon for 7 years. And halfway through my tenure there, I was asked to do an accounting of how much I had saved the city. And midway through that 7.5 years, the number that I came up with, which was vetted by the Energy Committee, was over $13 million. Projected out over 10 years, not just savings to date. Lebanon is a very different animal from Hartford. And New Hampshire is a very, very different animal from Vermont. But I assume that there are plenty of savings to be had by having a dedicated facility manager.
Yes, next question here.
Hi, Anise Mallinson, White River Junction. This is for Daniel for school board. You spoke about data and how you would use it. How do you feel like data from states like Mississippi can help us to improve outcomes in our district?
Thanks for asking that. What I have done throughout my career is look at data information. It's how we prevent ourselves from doing the same thing twice and expecting different results. And if we can learn from others who are trying to educate their children, a child in Mississippi, that child's brain learns how to read the same as a child here in Vermont. And so what works? What gets us the outcomes that we want? And we can follow that strategy. You know, it's the gold standard for how we do medicine. It's ways that we can get a better ROI for what we're spending.
Thank you.
We've had some good school questions here. I know that there is a write-in candidate for school board, and he's welcome to come up and say a few words at any point here. Meantime, next question right here, Lanny.
Yeah, my question is for Mike and Jeanette. Tell me in your own words, what is the role of a select board member? What do you think the role of a select board member is?
It's to make sure that the operations of the town are running smoothly in between the regular kind of day-to-day. So to kind of, just to make sure things are running smoothly and progressing as they should in between town meetings and select board meetings.
I feel put on the spot here, Lanny, because I feel like you know the verbatim answer from the manual of this, from the charter.
I'm just asking
However,
for your own, in your words.
I'm gonna give it in my own. I think it's it's not as broad as that. It is to provide support to the town manager to do his job, which is to manage the day-to-day functions of the town. And then also developing the budget and the kind of bigger mission things similar to the school board, the policy governance piece. It's more of that and not micromanaging the folks below.
Okay, Ashley, what's your thoughts? What's your role of a select board member? What's the role of a select board member in Hartford?
Our role is developing budgets. That was a important piece of it. And to oversee all the operations from a big picture of town business. John, the town manager, is our only employee, so we don't micromanage staff, we don't direct staff, but we make sure that the departments are moving in the directions that are in line with our town plan, with our strategic vision, and we listen to the voters, and we need to be open and available to resident feedback, and we need to take that feedback and use it in our decision making on the smaller day-to-day stuff. And it is incredible how much of our work is really we're approving a purchase for salt, or we're approving a purchase for, so there is a little bit of stuff that feels like micromanaging, but it's important for us to oversee the spending that happens and that it's in line with the budgets that we set.
Thank you all.
Yes, next question here.
Yes, my name is Leonard Morris, town of Hartford, and I forget, one fellow made the statement about growth. I've lived in this town all my life, and many years ago had a neighbor come in who had, I think it was Albany, and had done a lot of studies, and he said basically growth will never cause your pay for itself. I've been around, I've seen a lot of growth, and I've never seen my taxes go down because of it. And it doesn't make sense to keep doing something that over the last, 70 years of my life hasn't worked. It just doesn't make sense to me. And that's just a statement I wanted to make.
Thank you, Leonard. Is there somebody waiting on this side? Oh, yes, next over here.
Hey, Miranda from White River Junction. I want to ask, sorry, Joe, school board and select board members. Well, you know what? You throw your hat in the ring here too, But what initiatives would you support, or how would you work to make Hartford a more welcoming community? I would argue that something like Article 30 is something that really, it makes a statement that our town wants to be welcoming to everyone. It supports folks like Mos and Madawi, and it supports the other Palestinians that live in our community. And so there are many ways to think about that. That's, queer folks in our community, residents of color, disabled folks in our community. So what initiatives would you do, or what ways would you support making Hartford more welcoming for everyone?
Anybody wish to start off?
I'll start if you want.
Yeah, sure. Ashley.
I think supporting our committees like H-Corey, which do address racial inequality, as well as ballot articles like Article 30 are great, and also I think that it ties into the affordability conversation, right? This community right now is not welcoming to low-income people, to somebody who is elderly and looking to live independently in a house that they can manage, and is not welcoming to young people who are starting to, trying to get their feet under them and get their first apartment. When I was 18, I had one roommate and we split rent of $750. You need 5 roommates now in the same 2-bedroom apartment. I think continuing to focus on affordability as really being the entire underpinning of who can access our community and how, and that could look like encouraging volunteerism and other ways of getting things done in our communities that doesn't just like come out of the checkbook.
Yes, Tim.
We've had a couple meetings where people have come in and spoken pretty negatively about not-for-profits. And I just want to be a little bit of a cheerleader here to not-for-profits. A lot of the not-for-profits in the Upper Valley do unbelievably amazing work to help people who are down and out or struggling. They often do indeed pay taxes, not that we should be judging them on that feature alone. They also provide jobs, which definitely pay taxes. So I just want to emphasize that I think we should reflect on supporting all different kind of people and their struggles. I had one kind of thought around that the other night. I sometimes wake up at 2 in the morning and come up with these crazy ideas, but we could really consider, and it may be completely illegal, but the idea is that we apply the same tax rate structure to all residents. And I'm intrigued by this idea of creating a tiered system that is sensitive to people's capacity. One of the obligations of serving in this position is you're on the, I think it's called the Board of Civil Abatement, and you see some very people who are really struggling to stay in our community and afford it. And I just think that we need to keep an eye on that. And I think it's one way that we sort of like really should be sensitive and perhaps change policy to address that situation. Thank you.
I think that was a dig at me. So yeah, I have the nonprofits we have in town are wonderful. I've worked with them for 25 years now. I do have to say they do not pay property tax, except for Twin Pines is some weird thing I haven't figured out yet. But nonprofits, 501c3s do not pay property tax. So despite the Haven having 27 million in assets on their 990 as of 2023, they don't pay, they pay 0 in property taxes. We have 182 parcels in town that are exempt from property taxes. Yes, they do pay employment, payroll taxes, absolutely. I have to wonder, though, how many jobs they provide to folks in town. I'm just thinking offhand, there's not a whole lot of people that live in town and work for a nonprofit in town. And I'm just trying to come up with numbers offhand. I can't do that.
I will tell you, having been executive director of the Upper Valley Aquatic Center, that is a nonprofit and employs 130 people, we do. And so
Town, 130 Hartford residents?
we in the Upper Valley. I mean,
No, I want Hartford residents.
okay,
That's
and
what
I
you're
can
saying.
and I can get you the number of Hartford residents that we do as well. But we can contribute through our swim meets over $1 million to the Upper Valley in hotels and restaurants and retail that do that as well. So I guess what I'm saying is don't throw an entire blanket over the nonprofits because they do contribute back into the community.
That's great, because we invested, if you recall, anybody who was here for over 10 years, that the land that you're on was actually given to you by the town of Hartford. So again, like we have invested as a town into these nonprofits.
And I would say that we have given back to Hartford tenfold in that money that was invested in that. And, and if you want actual numbers, I can give it, which we give to the town manager every year and is a public record.
Yeah.
So, so all these numbers are
I do want to get back to Miranda's question, which was, what are the ways in which we can have Hartford be a more welcoming community?
Woo!
Anybody else?
We're not displaying that very well. I want to
So,
just apologize right now.
I do want to say we welcome low income people very well, indigent people very well. We have lots and lots of services. We welcome wealthy people very, very well. We do not welcome the people in my situation that are kind of middle of the road, raising kids, trying to make it work with the cost of living and taxes going through the roof. The tax rate, if you are poor enough, which I have qualified for this, the tax rate, you can declare homestead if you make under a certain amount. Your property taxes are reduced as a result of that, so that we do actually do that. But no middle income person can move to this town. We either have really wealthy or really poor.
Anybody else want to speak to Miranda's question before we move on?
Sure.
Yeah, Mike, go ahead.
So, yeah, I mean, I think we should continue to support our nonprofits for sure. But I think providing education to newcomers and all sorts of different groups on how they can access local services, take advantage of what we do have to offer, super important. Continue to provide affordable activities. I know we have some awesome events, like I've attended the Juneteenth event for the past few years, and it's just getting more and more awesome every year. So maybe more of that kind of thing. Yeah, push for a vibrant downtown. I mean, that makes everyone happy, right?
Great. Okay, over here at this microphone.
Good evening, everybody. My name's Colin Butler, and I'm a write-in candidate for the open, uncontested seat on the Hartford School Board this year. I'm done. Anything I say is probably going to cost me votes. I've got a lot to say. I'll be up back after the meeting if anyone wants to talk to me or harass me or criticize. That's fine. I'll be around for a little bit. I've been asked to be very brief in my comments. I want to talk about 4 different issues that are important to me and I think should be important to the Hartford School Board. The first is transparency. I think Dennis Brown mentioned the mysterious departure of the school superintendent about a year or so ago, and the very unfortunate decision made by the then board to pay him an additional year of salary to depart. I became very involved with the school board at that point, asked a lot of questions, asked for records, and really didn't get myself satisfied on what was going on. And I started attending school board meetings, and I've spent the time between then and now attending most of the school board meetings, offering my opinion on a few things and sitting and watching how the school board operates. I think the school board that's there now, the core 3 members who will remain board members, are doing a pretty decent job, and I'm very pleased with the idea that I may be able to serve alongside them. And I'm also very encouraged by what Daniel was talking about this evening. It's one of the issues that I want to talk about as well. The first thing I want to talk about is transparency in a larger sense, and that is all the work of government in Vermont is open to the citizens of Vermont with very few exceptions. You can read the state statutes and understand what school boards and town boards can do behind closed doors, and it's very limited. It seems from time to time that boards take actions without being clear in what they're up to, because they may have had discussions behind closed doors or by email or phone or whatever. I'm not suggesting that happened in the case of the Hartford School Board, but it's clear to me that there needs to be better accountability to the public, the citizens of Hartford, by the town board and by the select board and by the school board. And that's something that's very important to me. That also relates to the budget. There were a lot of questions about the budget this evening. At one point, Kathy suggested that because the Hartford School Board is a policy governance board, that they don't get themselves involved in the detail of building and supporting the school board's budget, the school district's budget. Kathy Lemire. I don't, right. Not criticizing Kathy. I've got 9 years of experience on a Wisconsin school board with policy governance. I was on a board that adopted policy governance. I can enthusiastically support policy governance, but policy governance can be applied very poorly. And I think in some instances, that may be what's happening in Hartford. The fact that we're a school board that uses policy governance does not excuse us from answering questions from the citizens. The citizens have the right to ask any question they want, and they should get an answer. If it's not from the board itself, it's from people who work for the board. And I'm going to be kind of a pain in the neck if I happen to be elected on that issue. The public deserves the right to know what's going on. The third thing I want to talk about is advocacy. There's a lot going on right now in Montpelier. Joe Major made sure we understood that he did not vote for Act 73. That's a good thing. What's not so good is he didn't convince enough of his fellow senators to vote against it for it to fail. So he's not completely off the hook at this point. Okay, just so you understand. The school board, in my estimation, hasn't done enough to communicate to the citizens of Hartford what's going on in Montpelier and what the danger to Hartford is if things continue to go the way they're expected to go or may go. We need to be more involved in advocating for the benefit of the town of Hartford, the Hartford School Board, the Hartford School District, and the kids in Hartford to make sure that we don't end up having to ship our kids 30 or 40 miles away to go to school somewhere, or to drive to Springfield or Brattleboro or Rutland to attend a school board meeting. What's happening in Montpelier is really disappointing at this point and can't be allowed to continue. And the last thing I want to talk about is perhaps the most important, and that's what Daniel brought up earlier. Academic performance in Vermont has tailed off or trailed off dramatically over the last few years. I was on the Sharon School Board back in 1989 before I was forced to move away to follow a job. And as I recall, it's a very small school. As I recall, we performed pretty well back then, and we had nothing to be ashamed of. Today, I would say Hartford should probably be ashamed to say that maybe as many as 2/3 of its students don't meet minimum proficiency expectations based on the measures set by the state. That's not satisfactory and needs to be addressed. And it's not something that's purely a Hartford problem. It's a problem all across the state because the statistics for the entire state suggest the same thing, that maybe 2/3 of all kids in Vermont, or approaching 2/3 of all the kids in Vermont, are not getting the education that they need and that we're paying for. So I'm going to work very hard, if elected, to make sure that we understand what's going on in terms of sustaining academic achievement and improving academic achievement and turning things around so that we're not the most expensive or one of the most expensive states in the union at the same time that we're one of the poorest performers. I'll be up back after. Thanks.
Thank you, Colin. Okay, we're in the home stretch. Yes, Joe, speak to that.
just give an endorsement for Colin. And Colin, it has been one of the ones that absolutely holds me accountable, and I appreciate that. And I appreciate, anyone, both in this job and on the state level that does that. And when I have a vote that Colin doesn't in Montpelier that Colin doesn't exactly agree with, I find out about it. And I will say this about him as well. If you want someone on the board that is fiscally responsible in particular, he is the man for the job. So I just want to give that shout out.
Thanks, Jeff. Yes, we have a question over here.
Yes, I'm Mary Alice Leonard Heath. I'm from White River. Solid waste management for the town of Hartford is a huge issue and problem. New Hampshire is going to stop taking our waste at some point in the very near future. Vermont has Coventry, which, I mean, how much trash can you fit there? And then we can send it to New York to burn or wherever it's going now. I guess, it's more than recycling, right? It's about education, it's about recycling, yes, reducing all of that. But the management of solid waste is critical, and I would say it's right up there with, it's gonna bring you to your big budget there. The town budget is gonna increase incredibly. No, I don't, but it's gonna increase the town budget and the school budget, and it's gonna be a significant hardship on people in a lot of different ways. So, how would you rate your priority with solid waste for each select board member? And what would you bring up or talk about this year?
Yeah, I can start if people want me to start. It's one of my top priorities. I was, like to say, the champion of the recycling advocacy, if I could pat myself on the back. But I think that the reason that I was is because I think that our recycling program really made clear how the residents of Hartford felt about being responsible with our waste management. And I think that it is a much bigger topic. And so it's something that we are very likely in the coming weeks going to be creating an ad hoc committee as a board. We just talked about this in our planning session that we had on Sunday. And we need an ad hoc committee, maybe a standing committee. I guess it hasn't been decided exactly what the structure will look like, but we need folks working on this now and planning for the next 5 years and for the long-term future. And I think that we have to start getting creative because I think it needs to be a bigger part of the conversation. Right now as a society, what we're doing with solid waste and consumption is not sustainable. And we're passing the buck and passing the burden onto other communities and other parts of the world. And I think that Hartford can do better. And I think that we can change the way that we create waste because we're going to be forced to. We're going to have to deal with it somehow. And the transfer station needs to be addressed, and how we're going to manage the transfer station going forward. It keeps cropping up and then we lose traction on it. So sorry, I'm going on too long. We need a task force, an ad hoc committee or a standing committee to report to the board and help make recommendations on solid waste solutions.
I'll jump on this because this is also, I think zero sort doesn't work. So the curbside recycling, although I loved it, many people didn't know how to recycle. They did wishful recycling, which I see in lots of, looking at my husband, is the expert on recycling. So lots of zero sort, I think, didn't work. I think that's why Casella raised their prices, because I would walk around my neighborhood and people were wishfully recycling things. If you taint one and I know people who work at Casella who told me if you taint one zero sort recycling container dumpster, the whole thing goes in the trash. So that is what we need to be providing townwide education around recycling. This goes to, we should reopen the Recycling Education Center that was built in 1992. There was lots of kids that were involved and had wonderful artwork there. There was a education center and then the recycling where you could sort things. We had a gentleman, an elderly man, died this year as a result of the ridiculous setup that they've got going on now. You can't go into the sort anymore. So when we took away curbside, we should have made sure that place was up and operational and running before we did that, instead of having cars go from dumpster to dumpster to dumpster, which I still think is wishful recycling, because those open dumpsters get rained in and that also isn't. So we need to reopen that center. We need to have, if we're going to have anything as curbside pickup, it should be compost. It is a law to compost. I remember working at AJ's in 96, 7, somewhere in there. And we'd have the farmers would come in and get like the food to feed their pigs. And so all the food I think we need to be doing things like that as a town. And there should be, if we're going to hire any new people, it should be a waste reduction specialist who just looks at what are we throwing out and how can we reduce this. That would be my role. Like, instead of a facilities manager, I'd want a waste reduction audit expert to be helping us figure out how do we reduce our use of things and how do we reduce our waste.
Other select board members for Mary Alice's question?
This is a very important issue. I was aware of the recycling, not so much the solid waste. I've been in apartment complexes in my time in Vermont, and everything is pretty much taken care of. But yeah, I mean, I think focus on education, definitely important. Makes me think of when I was a little kid and we had recycle, reduce, reuse, and we all thought we were going to save the planet. Maybe we can bring that back and try to save the planet again. Composting, important too. I don't know what's available to residents currently. I mean, I know I bring my compost to Sunrise Farm, which is awesome. Yeah. So yeah, I guess I don't know what the answer is. Task force sounds awesome. I support that 100%.
This is a complex one. It kind of goes back a ways because when I was living in Heartland on the Heartland Planning Commission, we had the Twin State gravel operation, if you will, that wanted to open up, and the law at the time was you couldn't build a bridge across the interstate unless you were displaying public good. And because Twin State Gravel is a private enterprise, they don't really display public good, so they were suggesting that is by the way, the best engineered design future landfill in the state of Vermont. So part of our town and part of Heartland actually has a future landfill, and the reason why it didn't open at the time is because they determined that if they opened it early, the tipping fees would become so low that we'd be attracting trash from Boston and New York, believe it or not. So Lebanon has been a funny one, right? Because they keep moving the time of when they claim they're going to cap that landfill. So I think all the towns were like, okay, well, we'll just wait and we'll kind of keep doing this and doing that. There's a lot of complexity because this stuff, we used to think, oh, we can shred that and make fences out of it. Well, the whole market and commodity market around recycling is a disaster. The other disaster is that we only have 2 significant trash hauler providers in New England, Waste Management and Casella. And I'm not saying they're the mafia, but they do control the market. And so if you look at the numbers of what we were presented as a town for that recycling program, and I raised my hand and said, this is ridiculous. We are not spending that kind of money to hop around, and we didn't even know how many people were actually using the service at the time. So there's been a combination of mismanagement. I think we have to own it in town. Our recycling center transfer station, in my humble opinion, is embarrassing. So we have some work to do, right? We have to either fix that up or move it. I'm an advocate for moving it more to a more central location. But anyway, there's a lot of work to be done. And as Ashley had said, we are indeed, it is a topic. We have a new public works director who seems very capable and dynamic. So I think we're going to be on this one. I would expect it's probably item 3 on the list in the public works world, but that's my opinion, not his. Thank you.
Great, thanks, Tim.
Could I just give a recommendation that you, instead of an ad hoc committee that sounds sort of like, oh, we'll just like get a group of people together and we'll, talk about this and make a recommendation, or a task force where you're dealing with it in the here and now, but that you have a standing advisory committee on solid waste management for the town of Hartford. That includes the school district. Then you get the educational piece. So that's all, but thank you.
Great, thanks, Mary Alice. Okay, I'm looking out at the room and seeing that I think about half of our attendees have departed. And it's also 10 p.m., so the confluence of those two factors, I think we've reached the end of our meeting this evening. Thanks once again to all of our candidates here on stage for being here tonight. So we'll wrap it up here and we'll see everybody at 10 o'clock on Saturday morning right here.